Hi there, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. Tonight's story begins with a plate of untouched garlic mashed potatoes and ends with the kind of silence that still echoes in my house months later. Darla didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't even stand up. She just blinked, fork halfway to her mouth, and said the sentence that hollowed out my entire chest like a shovel to the ribs. I should have chosen him. That's it. That's how it started. Not with an affair I caught red-handed. Not with lipstick on a collar or some flirty text on her lock screen. No, my marriage began unraveling between the peas and the pork chops, over candlelight and cloth napkins, with a man sitting across from me who smiled like he already knew she'd say it. We hadn't even finished dinner. Mason, our son, had just asked for more butter, and I was reaching for the basket when she dropped that nuclear sentence in front of her husband and her ex. He looked up, smirked. Darla didn't look at me. She couldn't. For 6 whole seconds, the only sound was the clink of Mason's fork hitting his plate. He knew something was wrong, but I don't think even he expected what would follow. I know I didn't. Knox, her high school sweetheart, the one I was told never to worry about, stood up, grabbed his jacket without a word, and walked out the front door. He didn't say goodbye, didn't even touch dessert. I followed him out 5 minutes later. The street was empty. His car was gone, and so was he. Gone in the kind of way that doesn't come back. Not the next morning. Not the next week. Not even after his name hit local news. Because when I finally filed a missing person report, 2 days later, after Darla kept saying he's just taking space, he does that. The police took one look at my face and asked me a question I couldn't answer. Why was your wife the last person seen with him? That's when things went from betrayal to suspicion, from heartbreak to horror. And what we discovered in the weeks after would make me question whether I ever knew the woman I married at all. This isn't just a story about a broken marriage. It's a story about a sentence that cost a man his life and nearly drove me to the edge of mine. By the next morning, I was already unraveling. I hadn't slept. I lay there next to Darla, staring at the ceiling, listening to the tick of the hallway clock echo through the house like it was mocking me. She slept peacefully, like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't blown a hole through 17 years of marriage in front of our child. Like the man she whispered about, the one she said she should have chosen, hadn't vanished into thin air just hours later. I sat on the edge of the bed, replaying every second of that dinner. Her tone, her eyes, that smirk Knox gave me as he stood and walked out. I don't know why I didn't follow him immediately. Maybe I was frozen. Maybe I was trying to convince myself it wasn't real. Or maybe, and this is what still guts me, I didn't want to know how far things had really gone. By 9 a.m., Knox still hadn't texted. His car wasn't parked anywhere nearby. I checked the street. I checked the side alleys. I even checked the little park behind our block. Nothing. I texted Darla from the kitchen. I didn't want to talk to her face to face. I just asked, did Knox say where he was going? She replied, he's fine. Don't overthink it. He's always been dramatic. That word, dramatic, lit something cold in my spine. It was too casual, too rehearsed. Darla never used words lightly, and she certainly never brushed off people disappearing as if it were routine. But she said it like she'd used that line before. That day, I called her office, said I was her husband, asked to speak with Knox, pretending I needed help finalizing an account he was handling. Her coworker paused and said, Knox? He quit 3 weeks ago. Didn't Darla tell you? No, she hadn't. In fact, she told me he just got transferred in. When I confronted her that night, her face paled. Not the, oops, I forgot, kind of pale, but the kind that crawls under your skin and stings. Her lips parted like she had 10 different lies queued up, but she blinked and said, I didn't think it mattered. Didn't think it mattered? This man came to our home, ate dinner at our table, told our son stories, looked at my wife like he had a claim on her, and apparently, she was welcoming it. And now he was missing. No one had seen him, and the one person who should be most concerned was acting like it was an afterthought. But it didn't stop there. That evening, as I sat in the living room trying to piece things together, Mason walked in and asked if I was mad at Mom. I asked him what made him think that, and he hesitated. Then, in the most innocent voice, he said, because I heard her say she wished we had a different family. A better one. I don't even know when he heard that. I don't know what context it was in. But kids don't make that stuff up. I didn't cry. I just sat there, numb, buzzing with static inside my skull, and realized I'd spent almost 2 decades building a life with a woman who might have been counting down the days to escape it. That night, I checked her phone bill. She had deleted every call with Knox, but the records showed over 50 calls in the last 2 months. Half of them in the middle of the night, some of them lasting over an hour. And one, just one, made on the night he vanished after he left our dinner table. A 20-minute call at 1:13 a.m. I didn't ask her about it. I didn't want to hear another lie. Instead, I lay on the couch and scrolled through his social media. Last post, 4 days before dinner. A picture of him at the gym, captioned, "Rebuilding from scratch." The comments were full of encouragement, except for one that made my blood go cold. From Darla's private account, an old one I forgot she even had, she wrote. "This time, don't let fear stop us. Us. Not you. Not me. Us." And suddenly, the question wasn't did she cheat? Or even was she planning to leave me? The question became terrifyingly simple. What were they planning together? Because Knox didn't just disappear. He was erased, and I was starting to wonder if my wife had done it. I didn't sleep again that night. I just sat in the kitchen, staring at my phone, staring at nothing, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator, and wondering how long I'd been the only one in this marriage actually trying. Maybe I'd been trying too hard, too long. For someone who made up her mind weeks ago. For someone who spoke in code and deleted her digital trail while I was in the same room, loving her blindly. By sunrise, I made up my mind to stop tiptoeing. No more passive questions. No more asking her if she was okay or confused. I needed the truth, or at least whatever parts of it she was willing to let slip. But before I could confront her, I found something I wasn't supposed to. It started with laundry. I was trying to keep myself distracted while she was upstairs showering. I opened her closet to grab the basket, and that's when I saw it. Knox's jacket. Folded, poorly, and shoved in the corner behind an old suitcase she hadn't touched in years. It still had the same fake leather patches on the elbows I remembered from dinner. I picked it up slowly, like I was handling evidence at a crime scene. The thing smelled like his cologne, citrus and smoke. And for a second, I honestly thought I might throw up. I dug into the pockets. There was nothing at first, just a candy wrapper and a few lint balls. But then I reached into the inside lining and felt something thin, folded twice. It was a note, torn from a spiral notebook, written in her handwriting. I'd recognize those rounded A's and tiny circles over the I's anywhere. This time I'm ready. We'll be smarter. I'll leave the door open. No name, no date, just that chilling sentence. We'll be smarter. Smarter than what? Than me? Than last time? And what did she mean, leave the door open? I sat on the bed, the note shaking in my hands. I must have read it 20 times before I heard her footsteps on the stairs. I shoved the jacket back where I found it, slipped the note into my wallet, and pretended I hadn't just uncovered what felt like a goodbye letter to reality. I couldn't confront her. Not yet. Not without more. If she was involved in something bigger, I needed to tread carefully. So I did something I never imagined I'd do. I installed a voice recorder under the couch. Not because I wanted to catch her cheating. That ship had already sailed. I just needed to hear what she sounded like when I wasn't around. I needed to hear the things she wasn't saying to me, because her silence was starting to feel weaponized. That night, I pretended everything was normal. I made dinner. I made jokes. She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. We watched a cooking show together. She leaned on my shoulder for exactly 6 seconds. Then she said she was tired and went to bed early. At 2:17 a.m. She came back downstairs. I know, because the recorder caught it all. She called someone, whispered into the phone like she was in church. Her voice was muffled, but clear enough. "No, it's still here. I didn't touch it." A pause. "I'll wait. Just tell me when." He's suspicious. My blood turned to static. There was a long silence after that. The only sounds were her pacing, opening the fridge, pouring something. Then she whispered, "Don't disappear on me too," and hung up. I sat in the dark replaying those words, the way her voice cracked on too, like she knew exactly where Knox was or what happened to him. And it wasn't what she had told anyone. So the next morning, I called her bluff. I asked her if she'd heard from Knox. She said no again. Same flat tone. Same avoidance. Then I asked her if she still had feelings for him. She stared at me for a long time before saying, "It doesn't matter anymore." Not no. Not of course not. Just that vague, brutal phrase that meant everything and nothing at once. She left for work 20 minutes later. Same purse. Same kiss on the cheek. Like we were still pretending to be married. Like we weren't teetering on the edge of something awful. And when I watched her drive away, a part of me, a small, scared part, thought I might never see her again. I didn't know if I wanted to. Because if she knew where Knox had gone, there was a chance she was next. I don't remember driving to work the next day. I must have made it there, must have sat through meetings, smiled at people, answered emails like I wasn't breaking apart inside. But truthfully, I have no idea what I said or did. Everything felt blurry. The kind of blur that comes from knowing something's horribly wrong, but not knowing what part of it will explode next. When I got home that evening, Darla wasn't there. Her car was gone, which was weird because Wednesdays were usually her yoga nights, and yoga started at 6:30. It was 5:40. I sat in my driveway for almost 10 minutes, just staring at the empty garage, wondering where she really was, wondering how many of her excuses had been lies I accepted just to keep the peace, just to keep her. Eventually, I got out and walked into the house. Everything looked normal at first. Lights off, shoes lined up, mail on the counter. But when I passed by the entryway camera monitor, the one hooked up to our motion sensor in the garage, something flickered. Now, I hadn't touched that system in months. It was one of those weekend projects Darla insisted we get just in case. Funny how you start seeing irony differently when your life is falling apart. I pulled up the camera history out of pure habit, not expecting anything. Most of it was boring. Me coming home, her taking the trash out, Mason riding his bike in circles. But then, something from the night of the dinner caught my eye. The timestamp read 9:47 p.m., exactly 27 minutes after Knox had walked out the front door. There he was, on camera, in the garage, with her. She was already out there waiting, still wearing the same blouse from dinner. He walked in through the side door. No knocking, no hesitation, like it had been planned. She said something I couldn't hear. The footage was video only, no audio in that zone, and he leaned in close. Their faces almost touched. She put a hand on his chest. Then she opened the back door leading into our yard. He stepped out into the dark. She didn't follow. She just stood there for a second, watching him vanish behind the trees. Then she shut the door slowly and stared at it for a long time. I must have watched that clip 20 times. She didn't look like someone saying goodbye. She looked like someone waiting for a signal. And then something else clicked. The jacket I'd found, the one stuffed in the back of her closet, had been on him in that video. But when he walked outside, he wasn't wearing it. He left it with her. Why? Why take off his jacket, hand it to her, and disappear into the night like a ghost? I ran upstairs and checked her closet again. Same spot, same jacket. But this time, I noticed something different. The inside lining had a small slit. Maybe I hadn't checked it thoroughly before, or maybe I was too shaken to see it, but now it was obvious. I reached in and felt something cold. Thin. Smooth. A flash drive. I stood there staring at it in my hand like it was made of fire. I didn't know what I expected. Pictures, messages, maybe more notes. But I knew whatever it held wasn't meant for me. I plugged it into my laptop with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The drive had only one folder. No name. Just a date. Feb_16_final. Inside, one single video file. I clicked play. At first, it was static. Then it cleared. Knox was sitting in his car, his old beat-up Civic, same one from high school, I remembered. And the camera was angled slightly below his chin like he'd propped his phone on the dashboard. His eyes were red. Wet. He was clearly recording something he'd been rehearsing. If anything happens to me, he said, voice trembling. It wasn't an accident. I paused the video. I don't know why. Maybe I needed a breath. Maybe I already knew what was coming and didn't want to hear it from him directly. But after a minute, I hit play again. I trusted her. I really did. I thought this time we were going to get it right. But she's lying to both of us, man. And I can't go back to Boston. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I think she's planning something. If you're watching this, Ellis, I'm sorry. I should have walked away a long time ago. He ended the video without saying goodbye. I sat there for a long time. Still, breathing too hard. Feeling my skin itch from the inside. I had proof now. Not proof of an affair. I didn't need that anymore. But proof that Knox had feared for his life. That he suspected her. That something had been set in motion long before I ever knew he was in town. And now I was sitting in a house with a woman who may have known exactly where he went and what he never came back from. I copied the video onto my phone. Took screenshots. Saved it all in the cloud. I even printed out the time-stamped screenshots from the garage camera and hid them in my work locker. Because suddenly, I wasn't just a heartbroken husband anymore. I was someone with evidence. And maybe a target. The next morning, the sky looked bruised. Heavy gray clouds hovered low, pressing down on the roof like the whole world knew something I didn't. Or maybe it did. Maybe the universe had seen this all coming, and I was just the idiot trying to hold it together with duct tape and denial. I skipped work. I told them I had the flu, but in reality, I couldn't focus on anything besides the flash drive hidden in the lining of Knox's jacket and the fact that my wife had stood silently while he vanished. By 10:15 a.m., I was sitting in the living room, lights off, blinds barely open, replaying the video again. Every pause, every blink, every single moment where Knox hesitated like he wanted to say more but couldn't. I watched his eyes. He looked scared, not of being caught, but of being wrong, of being played, of having trusted someone who would eventually turn the knife he handed her. Then, at exactly 10:42 a.m., someone knocked on the door. Twice. Sharp. Heavy. I froze. For a moment, I thought it might be Darla. Maybe she forgot her keys. Maybe she knew. Maybe she was coming back to end the lie before I could expose it. But when I opened the door, I saw a man and woman standing there in dark jackets with badges clipped to their collars. Detectives. My blood went cold. The woman did the talking. She introduced herself as Detective Rain and her partner as Detective Morrison. She said they were following up on a missing person report I had filed last week. Knox. I nodded and invited them in, trying not to sound like my throat was full of sand. They didn't sit down. They stood, politely, but firmly, as if sitting would imply we were all on the same side. Detective Rain looked around the room like she was cataloging everything. She asked when I had last seen Knox. I told her the truth. Dinner. He left the house. Never saw him again. Then she said something that knocked the air out of me. His car was found abandoned off I-35. No sign of forced entry. No blood. No luggage. Just his phone, wiped clean, and a handwritten list of addresses in the glove box. One of them was yours. I tried to keep my face still. My knees felt weak, but I nodded slowly and said I had no idea what that meant. She didn't push me on it. Instead, she asked if I knew anyone he might have felt unsafe around. I almost said my wife. But instead, I said, no one comes to mind. Coward. They asked if they could see the garage, and I hesitated for half a second before leading them out back. As they looked around, I glanced up at the motion sensor camera, knowing it had recorded everything. The timestamp, the embrace, the walk into the trees. But I hadn't given them that yet. I needed to understand it all first. I needed to survive this long enough to tell the story correctly. After about 15 minutes, they thanked me and left. But something about the way Morrison lingered at the door, that little pause, that almost imperceptible glance back at the house, made me wonder if they suspected more than they let on. That evening, I confronted Darla. I didn't mention the detectives. I didn't mention the video. I didn't mention the jacket or the flash drive or the time-stamped footage or the fact that Knox had looked into a camera and begged me, to hear him. I simply said, I know about the messages. She froze. Then, slowly, she walked to the kitchen sink, ran the tap, and stared out the window like she was trying to wash something off her conscience. I never meant for it to go this far, she finally said, almost a whisper. I asked her what it was. She didn't answer. I repeated the question. This time, she turned around and looked at me, and what I saw in her eyes wasn't guilt. It was panic. Real, raw, wide-eyed panic. That's when she said it. He wasn't supposed to come back. Those 5 words twisted my stomach into a knot so tight, I thought I'd throw up on the spot. Come back from where? I asked, voice shaking. But she just walked past me and went upstairs. And I let her. Because in that moment, I realized something I hadn't wanted to believe. Whatever happened to Knox wasn't just a mistake, or an affair gone wrong, or a love triangle burning out. No, this wasn't about infidelity. It was about a decision. And I wasn't sure who made it. But I was absolutely certain. I was never supposed to find out. I didn't sleep. Again, that phrase was starting to feel like my new reality. A cycle of sleepless nights and silent screaming inside my head while the world around me kept pretending everything was normal. The house was quiet. Darla stayed in the guest room. Mason was with my sister for the weekend. And I was alone with my thoughts and the video. I replayed Knox's final message dozens of times, this time with headphones. Listening closely, too closely. At one point, I shut my eyes just to hear better, to block out everything else and focus on the rise and fall of his breathing, the fear wedged between each sentence, the pauses that felt like entire chapters of confession he didn't get to say. And then, I heard it. A whisper. Right before the end of the video. Just after he said my name. Ellis. There was something underneath his voice. Barely audible. A scratchy breath that didn't match his pattern. I boosted the volume. Slowed the playback speed. And it was there. Another voice. Female. Just one word. Not loud. Not clear. But enough to send my pulse into overdrive. Run. I ripped off the headphones like they burned me. My entire body tensed, jaw locked, fists tight. I'd been listening to that video for days and somehow missed it. Had she been in the car? Had she whispered from the passenger seat? Or had he added it in? Overlaid it? Was it a warning to me? The file metadata didn't say much, just the date, February 16th, and the time, 3:01 a.m. That's the same night he vanished, just hours after dinner. But now, the question wasn't just what happened to him. It was who was with him when it did. I wanted to believe the voice wasn't Darla's. I wanted it so badly that I played a voicemail she left me 2 years ago on my birthday, just to compare. Same tone, same rasp at the end of her words, same soft lilt when she dropped her RS. It was her. No doubt in my mind anymore. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, staring at the floor, wondering how long I'd been living with a stranger. How many moments I had chalked up to stress or distance were actually calculation, distraction, strategy. And that's when I realized I had to know what was in her phone. Her real phone. The one I hadn't seen in days. She'd been using a backup device since the night the detectives came by. Said hers fell in the tub. Claimed it was water damaged and unusable. At the time, I didn't question it. Now I knew better. So when she left for groceries that afternoon, and I watched her car turn the corner from the upstairs window, I slipped into the guest room and started searching. Nothing under the pillows. Nothing in drawers. But inside her suitcase, the one she used only for solo trips, there was a zipper pocket. Inside that was a phone. Powered off. Wrapped in a scarf. I turned it on. No password. That was the first red flag. Darla was always paranoid about security. Fingerprint locks. Two-factor everything. This felt planted. Too easy. Still, I opened it. There were no recent messages. No call logs. No apps besides the basic factory ones. No email accounts linked. But the gallery had one folder. Hidden. Buried under 3 levels of system files. Its name was just a number. 4102. There were only 2 things in it. One was a photo. The other, a video. The photo showed a dark cabin in the woods, windows glowing amber from inside. It wasn't a selfie. More like a surveillance shot. Taken from a distance. Grainy, like it had been zoomed in way too far. But I recognized it immediately. It was Knox's uncle's cabin. He used to go there every summer. Said it was his reset button. Darla had been there once, back in college. I hadn't heard about it in years. And the video made my skin crawl. It was just a door. Wood. Old. With a brass knob and 3 long scratches carved into it. There was no sound. Just wind in the background. And a timestamp. 2:59 a.m. 2 minutes before Knox recorded his message. It didn't show anything happening. But it felt like it was meant to show everything. That door wasn't random. It was inside the cabin. I remembered it from a photo Knox showed me years ago, one he framed in his apartment. That door led to the cellar. I closed the phone, wrapped it back up, returned it exactly as I found it. Then I sat on the edge of the bed, completely still, listening for her car outside. I had 2 choices. Keep pretending I didn't know any of this. Or go to the police and risk blowing everything wide open. My family, my safety, my son's peace, all of it. But one thing was certain now. Whatever happened to Knox didn't end at my dinner table. And the answers were sitting in a cabin in the woods, behind a door with 3 carved lines. That looked a lot like claw marks. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I didn't even leave a note. I just grabbed my keys, my flashlight, my phone, a printed copy of Knox's video, and left. It was 9:41 p.m. when I pulled out of the driveway. Darla was still out. Or pretending to be. I didn't care. I couldn't wait for her lies anymore. I needed to see that cabin with my own eyes. Needed to stand on that porch and face whatever she and Knox left behind. It was a 2-hour drive into the middle of nothing, A stretch of forgotten road with no cell service, no passing headlights, and trees that leaned just a little too close to the asphalt. The kind of road you only find when you're not supposed to. The kind of road you don't admit to anyone that you took. The GPS cut out halfway there, so I followed memory. Knox had shown me that place once during college, bragged about how the deer walked right up to the windows and how the silence felt like therapy. Back then it sounded like paradise. Now it felt like a setup. The turnoff came just past mile marker 107, an unpaved path hidden behind a broken fence and a mailbox with no house number. I eased the car down the gravel road, every bump sending a little jolt through my chest. There were no lights, no signs, no sounds except the wind through the trees and the occasional crack of a branch under something I couldn't see. I parked at the tree line and walked the last stretch on foot. The flashlight beam jittered with every step, slicing through the darkness like a knife made of glass. And then, like a ghost rising from the dirt, the cabin appeared. It looked just like the photo. Wood siding faded to silver. One window half-board. A thin sliver of light bleeding from under the door like something inside had been waiting for me. I approached slowly. My breath was sharp, shallow. My hand hovered near the doorknob, but I didn't touch it yet. Instead, I walked around the cabin. Every window was fogged. Not from heat, it wasn't that cold, but from condensation, like something had been breathing on the glass from the inside. I couldn't explain it, and I didn't try to. My body was reacting in a way my brain hadn't caught up with yet. A primal kind of fear, the kind you don't talk about, because it sounds insane in daylight. Then I saw it. Behind the cabin, beneath the creaky old deck, was a storm door. Rusted metal, bent hinges, and on the wood above it, 3 long scratches. Just like the ones in the video. I knelt down and pulled on the handle. It resisted, then groaned open. Inside, a narrow staircase disappeared into pitch black. I clicked on the flashlight again and descended, one step at a time, feeling the weight of the cabin settle above me like a coffin lid. The cellar was small, musty, the kind of damp that sinks into your skin. Shelves lined with old paint cans, broken lanterns, a stack of yellowed newspapers from 2006. But there, on the far side of the room, was something new. A chair. Wooden. Plain. Centered beneath a single dangling bulb that wasn't turned on. And beside it, a phone. Not mine. Not hers. His. Knox's phone. Unmistakable, with the cracked corner and custom red case I remembered from dinner. It sat on the floor, screen dark, as if it had been waiting. I picked it up. It was dead. I checked the pocket of my coat for a battery pack and plugged it in. When the screen finally lit up, there was no lock screen. It opened straight to the camera, and the last photo taken was of me, standing in the driveway, taken from across the street. Time-stamped the morning after he disappeared. I staggered back. My legs hit the chair and nearly sent me to the floor. The phone slipped from my hands and clattered on the concrete. I grabbed it again, shaking, scrolling through the gallery. There were dozens of photos, none of them taken by Knox. Screenshots of text threads between him and Darla. Pictures of handwritten notes. One image showed a hand, hers, holding a set of keys next to a plane ticket. The departure city was mine. The destination wasn't listed. But the most chilling thing wasn't the photos. It was the video labeled simply, "Final." I clicked play. Knox appeared again. But this wasn't the same message I'd found in the jacket. He looked more frantic. His hair was wet. His lip was bleeding. He was in the cabin. I could see the cellar door behind him. I don't have much time. I made a mistake. She's not who I thought. She told me we were leaving, starting over. But she brought me here instead. She said you'd understand. Said you'd come. He paused, staring directly into the lens. Ellis, if you see this, she's not done. Then the screen went black. I stood there for a long time. Just breathing. Just trying to stay upright. Because that meant she knew I would come here. That she wanted me to come here. And I had done exactly what she hoped. Outside, a twig snapped. Someone was walking toward the cabin. I turned off the flashlight and crouched low in the shadows. And that's when I heard her voice, calling my name. I didn't move. Not right away. I stayed low, crouched behind a stack of boxes in that dusty old cellar, holding my breath while her voice drifted through the cracks in the wooden floorboards above me. She was outside the cabin, calling my name. Not yelling. Not angry. Soft. Calm. Controlled. Like she knew exactly how to sound. I heard the front door creak open. Her footsteps followed. Slow. Methodical. She wasn't scared. She was waiting, expecting. I knew, in that moment, that walking up those stairs might mean the end of me. But staying down there, in the dark, afraid and unsure, meant she still had control. And I wasn't going to let her have it anymore. So I stood. I grabbed Knox's phone, shoved it into my coat pocket, turned on the flashlight, and walked up those stairs with a pounding heart and shaking limbs. She was standing in the living room, silhouetted against the window, arms crossed. Her expression shifted when she saw me. Not surprise, just disappointment. "Ellis," she said softly, "you weren't supposed to find this place." I stepped closer. "Then why leave a trail?" Her smile faltered. "Because I thought you'd walk away. Like he did." I didn't answer. I just pulled out the flash drive from my pocket and placed it on the dusty table between us. "I saw everything," I said. "The messages, the cabin, the video." She didn't reach for it. Instead, her shoulders slumped, like a curtain finally dropped. It wasn't supposed to be like this. He wanted more. He pushed. I panicked. But I never meant to. To what? I interrupted. To make him disappear? To drag me into this mess? She didn't respond. And I realized then, she wasn't the villain I had imagined. Not some cold-blooded manipulator. She was a scared woman who made 1,000 wrong decisions in a row, and it consumed everything. But I wasn't going to let it consume me too. I backed away. "I'm going to the police." Her eyes didn't widen. Her mouth didn't move. She just nodded once, slowly, and said, "Okay. No chase. No screaming. Just surrender." I left the cabin without another word. I drove straight to the nearest sheriff's station and handed them everything. The flash drive, the footage, Knox's phone, the messages, the location, even the torn note I found in the jacket. They listened. They asked questions. And for once, I had answers. The investigation took weeks. But eventually, the full story came out. Knox hadn't died. He'd run. He staged his disappearance after realizing Darla had no intention of starting a new life with him, and instead was using him to manipulate me, to create a fracture big enough to break us. When he realized how unstable she'd become, he panicked, left the cabin in the middle of the night, ditched his car, and fled to Arizona under a fake name. He reached out after seeing his own video on the news. Darla was arrested, not for murder, because there wasn't one, but for obstruction, falsifying evidence, and several other charges tied to what she did in the aftermath to cover her tracks. It was messy, ugly, but it wasn't the end of me. For the first time in over a year, I could breathe. I kept custody of Mason. I moved us closer to my sister. I started seeing a therapist, something I used to roll my eyes at, but now it keeps me sane. And little by little, I started putting myself back together. Not the version of me who smiled through the lies. The real me. The man who chose to survive the story, instead of being destroyed by it. Thanks for listening, everyone. If you've ever had a moment, a single sentence or choice, that changed your life forever, drop it in the comments. What happened? What did you learn from it? Let's talk about it below. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to stay updated with more real-life stories right here on Reddit Confessions. Until next time, stay aware, stay grounded, and never ignore that gut feeling. You might be right.